Ladies and gentlemen, today I invite you to look inward, because the transformation you've been waiting for is already taking shape. The things you have prayed for, hoped for, and imagined are not far away. They are forming, gathering, aligning, and preparing to enter your experience. The question is no longer will it happen, but are you prepared to receive it? Mind creates the framework of experience by acting as both the architect and the filter of everything you perceive and respond to in life. This principle teaches that the world you encounter on the outside is shaped first by the world you cultivate on the inside. Before any event takes place or any opportunity arrives, your mind has already created the structure that determines how you interpret that event and whether you even recognize the opportunity. In essence, your inner assumptions form the boundaries and possibilities of your personal reality. What you think consistently, what you expect, and what you believe about yourself and life become the silent forces that mold your daily experiences. When we examine how the mind influences experience, it becomes clear that thoughts are not isolated or passive. They are active patterns of energy that condition your perception. For example, if your dominant inner belief is that life is difficult or unfair, your mind will continually highlight situations that appear to validate that belief. You will notice more setbacks than progress, more conflict than harmony, and more obstacles than openings. This isn't because those are the only things happening. Rather, it is because the mind has trained itself to detect and amplify what aligns with its internal expectations. On the other hand, if you cultivate a belief that life supports you, you will naturally become more aware of the resources, connections, and possibilities that guide you toward your goals. In this way, the mind becomes a lens, magnifying certain aspects of reality and dimming others, all based on the assumptions you hold. Inner dialogue plays a significant role in shaping this framework. Your self-talk, whether encouraging or discouraging, forms the foundation of your emotional state. The thoughts you repeat become internal narratives, and these narratives become the scripts you live out. If your inner conversation is filled with doubt, insecurity, or fear, your experiences will reflect those themes. You may find yourself hesitating, procrastinating, or avoiding opportunities that require confidence and boldness. Conversely, when your inner dialogue affirms your worth, your capability, and your potential, you naturally begin to act with clarity and confidence. Your daily behavior aligns with a state of assurance rather than uncertainty. Therefore, one of the most influential steps in shaping experience is transforming the tone, content, and direction of your inner conversations. Your assumptions also determine your emotional responses. Emotions do not arise randomly. They emerge from the meanings you attach to situations. Two people can encounter the exact same circumstance, but their experiences can be entirely different because of the assumptions they carry. For one person, a challenge may feel threatening because they assume failure or struggle. For another, the same challenge may feel motivating because they assume growth and expansion. What differs is not the external event, but the inner framework interpreting it. By adjusting your assumptions, by teaching your mind to expect constructive outcomes instead of negative ones, you influence not only how you feel, but also the actions you take as a result of those feelings. The mind shapes experience by influencing behavior itself. Thoughts lead to emotions, and emotions compel action. If your inner state is aligned with confidence, you act boldly and consistently. If your inner state is aligned with fear, you act hesitantly or not at all. Over time, these actions or lack of action become the results you see in your life. A mind that assumes success encourages you to take steps that lead to success. A mind that assumes failure holds you back from the very behaviors that would create progress. This is why the inner world must shift before the outer world can reflect that shift. You cannot behave like someone with confidence until you believe you are someone with confidence. You cannot act like a person who expects abundance if you are internally preparing for lack. The mind influences experience through selective focus. At any given moment, countless stimuli exist around you, but your mind chooses what to focus on based on your dominant assumptions. If your inner framework is built around opportunity, you will notice chances to grow, learn, or advance. Opportunities others may overlook entirely. If your inner framework is built around danger or limitation, you will fixate on risks and barriers even in situations that could benefit you. This selective focus is one of the strongest mechanisms that shape your personal reality. It means that what you see is not what is objectively there. You see what your mind is conditioned to recognize. Changing your conditioning changes your perception, and changing your perception changes your experience. Another profound aspect of this principle is that your mind shapes the meaning of time. When you expect negative outcomes, time feels heavy, slow, and resistant. You may feel as though progress is taking longer than it should. When you expect positive outcomes, time feels lighter and more fluid. You begin to notice progress more easily because your mind is attuned to signs of forward movement rather than signs of delay. Your internal framework determines not only how you interpret events, but also how you interpret the flow of life itself. The mind also influences interpersonal experiences. Your assumptions about people, whether they are supportive, trustworthy, cooperative, or difficult, shape how you treat them and how they respond to you in return. If you assume others are against you, your tone, energy, and words may unconsciously communicate defensiveness, causing people to react in negative ways. If you assume others wish to cooperate, your presence becomes more open, which invites more positive interactions. Your assumptions create a feedback loop in your relationships. In this sense, the framework of your mind determines the quality of your connections with others. The idea that the mind creates the framework of experience teaches that your inner state is the architect of your external world. You are not a passive observer of circumstances. You are the origin point from which circumstances take shape. To change what you encounter, you must first change what you assume. By choosing empowering thoughts, nurturing constructive beliefs, and directing your imagination deliberately, you reshape the structure through which life flows to you. When the mind is aligned with possibility, life begins to reveal possibilities. When the mind assumes success, experiences begin aligning with success. This is why all lasting change begins internally, because the framework of your reality is constructed from the thoughts you hold most consistently. Imagination is the first stage of manifestation, because every outcome in your life originates as an internal image long before it appears in physical form. When you picture a desired future, you are not engaging in idle fantasy. You are initiating the creative process that shapes your reality. Imagination acts as the blueprint, the prototype, the energetic mold of what you eventually experience. Nothing you create, achieve, or receive enters your life without first existing in the unseen realm of thought. This concept teaches that imagination is not a mere escape from reality. It is the foundation upon which reality is built. To understand the power of imagination, consider how the mind interacts with experience. The human mind cannot distinguish vividly imagined experiences from real ones. When you imagine something with emotional clarity, your body responds as though it is already happening. You feel the emotions of accomplishment, love, confidence, or relief even before the physical event occurs. These emotional responses signal to your mind that the experience you are picturing is real enough to influence your behavior, your choices, and your expectations. This is why imagination is so powerful. It conditions your inner state to align with the reality you want to create. When you engage in imaginative thought, you are selecting from the infinite possibilities of what your life could become. Every possibility exists in potential, but imagination chooses which potential you bring into focus. What you repeatedly imagine becomes familiar to your mind, and what becomes familiar becomes believable. Once something becomes believable, your actions begin to naturally align with it. You start moving in ways you may not even consciously notice. Your decisions become more purposeful, your confidence increases, and your perception shifts to support the vision you hold within. Imagination also has the ability to override limiting beliefs. Many of the constraints you feel in life come from old assumptions. Ideas about what is possible, what you deserve, or what you are capable of. These limiting beliefs act as internal barriers that restrict your growth. But imagination gives you the opportunity to bypass these barriers by creating a picture that contradicts them. When you imagine yourself living the life you desire, you temporarily suspend those limitations. In that moment, your mind experiences the freedom of possibility. Over time, the more you return to this imagined state, the more your old beliefs dissolve and new empowering beliefs take their place. In this way, imagination becomes a tool of transformation, not by forcing change, but by gently shifting the boundaries of what you believe is achievable. Another aspect to consider is that imagination influences your emotional state, and your emotional state influences your vibration or inner atmosphere. Your internal atmosphere attracts experiences that match it. When you imagine positive outcomes, you generate emotions like joy, gratitude, relief, and empowerment. These emotions form a receptive state that invites circumstances consistent with them. On the other hand, when you imagine negative scenarios, you generate fear, worry, or doubt, and these emotions attract conditions that reflect those states. This is why controlling the direction of your imagination is essential. You cannot create a positive future while mentally rehearsing negative outcomes. Imagination also plays a crucial role in persistence. When you face challenges or delays, it is the mental image of your desired outcome that keeps you steady. Without imagination, difficulties feel final. But with imagination, difficulties become temporary because you can look beyond them to the outcome you know is coming. The clearer the image, the stronger your resilience. You become capable of enduring setbacks because your mind is anchored to the future you've already experienced internally. In this way, imagination not only initiates manifestation, it sustains it. Imagination opens the door to solutions and opportunities that you may not have recognized otherwise. When you hold a vision in your mind, your subconscious begins searching for ways to make that vision real. It guides your awareness toward resources, ideas, and connections that align with the image you hold. You might suddenly notice an opportunity that was always present, but previously invisible to you because your mind was not tuned to it. Imagination changes your mental filters, making you receptive to anything that supports the fulfillment of your vision. This process can feel almost magical, but it is simply the mind aligning perception with intention. Imagination also influences identity. Who you believe yourself to be is largely shaped by the images you hold in your mind. If your mental imagery reflects your limitations, you will act in alignment with those limitations. If your mental imagery reflects your strengths and your potential, you will begin acting as someone capable of achieving what you desire. Your self-image is the foundation of your behavior, and imagination is the tool that shapes self-image. By repeatedly imagining yourself as the person who already has what you desire, you adopt the identity of someone who is ready to receive it. This internal identity shift is one of the most powerful aspects of manifestation, because you cannot achieve a life that contradicts the image you hold of yourself. Imagination bridges the gap between the present and the future. It allows you to live in the feeling of fulfillment before physical circumstances catch up. When you consistently imagine the reality you want, you create a mental state that feels natural and normal to you. And whatever becomes natural within eventually becomes natural without. The outer world reorganizes itself to match the inner world you have established through repeated imaginative acts. Another important dimension is the role of imagination in expectation. What you imagine often becomes what you expect. Expectation is a powerful force because it influences how you interpret events. When you expect good, you interpret neutral events as opportunities. When you expect challenges, you interpret even positive events with suspicion. Imagination shapes your expectations, and expectations shape your experiences. This is why maintaining control over your imagination is crucial. It ensures that you cultivate a mindset prepared for the outcomes you desire. Imagination is the first stage of manifestation because it activates the spiritual, psychological, and emotional mechanisms that bring desires into reality. It sets the tone, defines the direction, and establishes the internal blueprint. Before anything can show up in your physical experience, it must first become real in your inner world. When you imagine with clarity, consistency, and emotion, you set in motion forces that align your life with your vision. In essence, imagination is not just the beginning of manifestation, it is the engine that drives it. Assumption precedes reality because the beliefs you hold, especially the ones you adopt with conviction, become the underlying causes of the experiences that eventually unfold in your life. When you assume something to be true, you give it a kind of psychological and emotional certainty that shapes your perceptions, your reactions, and your behavior. This internal certainty acts as the foundation upon which your external world organizes itself. In many ways, assumption is the quiet power that directs the outcomes you encounter. It is not loud or dramatic. It works subtly, consistently, and often unnoticed. Yet every meaningful change in your life begins with a shift in what you assume to be real for you. To understand the depth of this principle, consider that every assumption is essentially a chosen inner state. It is the mental position you hold about yourself, about others, and about life. When you assume success, you behave differently than when you assume failure. When you assume you are loved, you carry yourself differently than when you assume you are unwanted. These assumptions form the emotional atmosphere in which you live, and that atmosphere influences every decision you make. You respond to life not according to the facts of a situation, but according to your assumptions about what those facts mean. Therefore, your assumptions quietly sculpt the meaning you assign to events, and that meaning shapes your reality. Assumption also determines your expectations. When you assume something is already yours, you naturally expect it to unfold. Expectation is not passive. It directs your attention, influences your emotional state, and shapes your behavior. If you assume that your goals are out of reach, your expectation becomes one of disappointment. You begin to look for signs of failure, and you unconsciously behave in ways that confirm the assumption. But when you assume the fulfillment of a desire, your expectation shifts to confidence and anticipation. You begin to look for signs of progress, and you behave in alignment with the belief that success is inevitable. Over time, these differing expectations produce differing realities. Another crucial dimension of assumption is its influence on identity. What you assume about yourself becomes the identity you inhabit. If you assume you are capable, worthy, and resourceful, you naturally take on behaviors that reflect these qualities. You show initiative, you trust your decisions, and you persevere through difficulty. But if you assume you are unprepared or unworthy, you hesitate, overthink, and self-sabotage. Your assumptions slowly sculpt your self-image, and your self-image dictates the limits of your life. You can only reach the level of the identity you assume to be true. This is why meaningful change requires more than new habits. It requires new assumptions about who you are. Assumption precedes reality because it directs your perception. You do not see life objectively. You see it through the filter of your inner beliefs. If you assume people are untrustworthy, you will notice behaviors that support that assumption and overlook behaviors that contradict it. If you assume opportunities are abundant, you will notice openings others walk past without seeing. Your assumptions determine what you perceive as relevant, possible, or meaningful. They guide your focus, and where your focus goes, your reality follows. Assumptions also shape your emotional response to circumstances. Emotions are not merely reactions to external events. They emerge from your interpretation of those events, and your interpretations are rooted in your assumptions. If you assume things always work out for you, even difficulties will feel manageable because your underlying belief reassures you that solutions will come. If you assume life is against you, even neutral events may trigger stress or fear because your assumptions assign negative meaning to them. This emotional landscape then influences your decisions, which ultimately influences the outcomes you experience. In this way, assumption silently directs the chain of cause and effect in your life. Another powerful aspect of assumption is that it creates a sense of psychological inevitability. When you assume something with conviction, you remove the need for constant questioning or doubt. Your mind becomes steady, anchored, and clear. This steadiness allows you to persist even when the outer world has not yet aligned with your inner belief. Manifestation often requires time, and during that time, your assumptions serve as the foundation that keeps you aligned with your desired outcome. Without a solid assumption, temporary setbacks can easily shake your confidence. But with a firm assumption, setbacks lose their power because your inner certainty is stronger than the temporary appearance of delay. Assumption also influences how you carry yourself, your posture, your tone, your energy, your presence. When you assume you are someone who achieves what you desire, your behavior naturally reflects confidence. Others respond to you differently because confidence is a magnetic state. Opportunities gravitate toward people who embody certainty. Conversely, when your assumptions are filled with doubt or fear, your energy reflects insecurity. People sense hesitation, and opportunities tend to bypass those who are unsure. This is not magic. It is the natural consequence of how assumptions shape demeanor and how demeanor shapes results. Assumption precedes reality because it governs your choices. You make thousands of decisions, both small and large, each day. Most of these decisions are influenced not by logic, but by the assumptions you hold. You choose who to talk to, what to pursue, what to avoid, and how much effort to give, all based on your inner beliefs. Over time, these decisions accumulate into the outcomes you experience. A simple assumption, I can do this, leads to actions that make success possible. An opposite assumption, this will never work, leads to avoidance, hesitation, and self-limitation. Your life becomes a reflection of the assumptions that shaped your choices. Assumptions create a psychological environment that influences creativity and problem-solving. When you assume a solution exists, your mind searches for it. When you assume progress is possible, your mind becomes alert to new ideas and strategies. But when you assume something cannot be done, mental creativity shuts down. Your brain does not waste energy searching for solutions to problems it believes are unsolvable. This is why assumption is such a critical factor in personal growth and transformation. It determines whether your mind operates in problem-solving mode or defeat mode. Assumption precedes reality because it shapes the emotional and mental state that attracts experiences consistent with it. When you assume that your desire is already fulfilled, you naturally embody the feelings of fulfillment: peace, joy, gratitude, confidence. These feelings place you in a receiving state where your inner atmosphere matches the outcome you want. When your internal state matches your desired reality, the external conditions begin to align. Life reorganizes itself around the assumptions you hold with persistence and belief in every meaningful sense. Assumption is the starting point of creation. It is the silent architect shaping the world you walk through. By changing what you assume to be true, you change the trajectory of your life. Persistence ensures fulfillment because the outcomes you experience in life are shaped not by what you think once, or even what you feel occasionally, but by what you continuously hold as true in your inner world. Persistence is the bridge between desire and fruition. It is the sustained commitment to your inner vision, regardless of the outer circumstances that may temporarily contradict it. Without persistence, then the strongest desire fades. With persistence, even the most unlikely goal becomes inevitable. To understand why persistence is so essential, you must first recognize how the mind interacts with your environment. The external world does not always immediately reflect your inner changes. There is often a natural delay between the moment you adopt a new belief and the moment your experiences begin to mirror that belief. During this period, persistence acts as your stabilizing force. It keeps you rooted in the assumption of your desired outcome while the outer world rearranges itself to match your inner state. When people give up, it is rarely because their desire is impossible. It is usually because they interpret the delay as evidence that it won't happen. Persistence protects you from misinterpreting that delay. Persistence also reconditions your subconscious mind. Your subconscious operates based on the ideas you repeat with emotion and consistency. A new belief cannot take root through force. It becomes natural through repetition. When you persist in assuming your desire is already fulfilled, you gradually overwrite old patterns of doubt, fear, or limitation. Your inner life becomes aligned with the state you want to embody. Once the subconscious is reconditioned, your behaviors, reactions, and expectations shift automatically. Persistence does not simply help you reach your goal. It transforms you into the person who naturally experiences that goal. Another reason persistence is vital is because the mind has deeply ingrained habits. Your old beliefs and emotional reactions are familiar, and the human mind tends to return to what is familiar, even when that familiarity is limiting. Persistence is the process by which you replace old mental habits with new ones. Without persistence, the mind slips back into previous patterns because they feel comfortable. But with consistent effort, the new patterns become the default. Persistence is not about forcing willpower. It is about gently but firmly returning to the inner state of your desire whenever your mind wanders away from it. Persistence influences your emotional state, which is key to manifestation. Emotions have momentum. They carry the energy of your dominant thoughts. When you persist in holding a feeling of fulfillment, confidence, or expectancy, you create an emotional atmosphere that supports the realization of your desire. When you waver, shifting between belief and doubt, your emotional atmosphere becomes unstable. This instability sends mixed signals to your subconscious, delaying the manifestation process. Persistence stabilizes your emotional state so that your inner world becomes a consistent match to the outcome you seek. Persistence changes how you interpret challenges. When you are not persistent, a challenge appears to be a sign that your desire is unattainable. But when you persist, challenges lose their negative meaning. Instead of seeing them as obstacles, you see them as temporary appearances that have no power over your inner conviction. This makes you mentally resilient. Persistence strengthens your ability to remain calm, centered, and unwavering, even when the circumstances do not immediately support your vision. Persistence also influences your patterns of behavior. When you hold a sustained belief in your desired outcome, you naturally take actions that align with that belief. These actions often appear small and subtle, but they accumulate over time to create significant results. A persistent mind acts with clarity and purpose. It notices opportunities, takes inspired steps, and moves confidently in the direction of its goals. In contrast, a mind that lacks persistence acts inconsistently, sometimes moving forward, sometimes retreating, and this inconsist. NC produces inconsistent results. Persistence shapes expectation, the quiet inner certainty that something is coming. Expectation is powerful because it colors your perception of everything that happens. When you expect fulfillment, even minor progress feels meaningful, and you interpret neutral events as steps forward. When you lack expectation, even positive signs can seem doubtful or insignificant. Persistence builds expectation, and expectation shapes your experience of reality. A persistent inner state also influences the people around you. When you remain steady in your belief, others respond to you differently. They sense confidence rather than uncertainty, clarity rather than confusion. This changes the dynamic of relationships and opens doors to support, collaboration, or opportunities that would not have emerged if you were wavering. Persistence communicates strength, not just to others, but to yourself. Persistence aligns your inner world with the natural laws of creation. Everything that takes form, whether in nature, technology, relationships, or personal growth, requires consistency. A seed does not become a tree overnight. It grows through repeated cycles of nourishment and exposure to light. Similarly, your inner assumptions grow stronger through repeated cycles of attention, feeling, and belief. Persistence is the nourishment of your desire. Without it, the seed cannot grow. Persistence also protects your vision from doubt. Doubt is not dangerous because it exists. It is dangerous because people pay attention to it. When you persist in focusing on the fulfillment of your desire, doubt loses its influence. It becomes background noise rather than a deciding factor. Persistence trains your mind to prioritize your vision over your fears. Persistence is the refusal to take temporary conditions as final. It is the commitment to remain loyal to your inner state, even when the physical world has not yet aligned with it. This loyalty is what brings desires into manifestation. Reality must eventually conform to the state you occupy most consistently, and persistence is what keeps you in that state. Through persistence, you develop the emotional strength, mental clarity, and inner certainty that make manifestation inevitable. It is the steady pulse behind every successful outcome, the quiet force that keeps you aligned with your desired reality until it becomes your lived experience. Alignment prepares you to receive because you cannot experience what you are not internally attuned to. Receiving does not start when your desire appears in the physical world. Receiving begins when your inner state becomes a match to what you want. Alignment is the process of bringing your thoughts, emotions, expectations, and assumptions into harmony with the outcome you seek, so that when it arrives, you recognize it, welcome it, and feel naturally connected to it. Without alignment, even blessings can pass you by unnoticed, or you may find yourself unprepared to hold on to them. With alignment, you become receptive not only to the manifestation itself, but also to the pathways and opportunities that lead to it. When you align internally with your desire, you shift into a state where you expect good things to come to you. Expectation is a powerful element of alignment because it shapes the lens through which you interpret your experiences. A person who expects negative outcomes notices only obstacles, but a person who expects fulfillment becomes attuned to possibilities and timing. Expectation transforms your outlook. You begin to see doors that were always there but previously invisible because your inner state was not prepared to acknowledge them. Alignment turns what was once dismissed as coincidence into meaningful movement toward your goal. Alig. Ment is also deeply connected to emotional readiness. Emotional readiness means you are emotionally capable of holding the state of your desire before it physically materializes. If you want peace but live internally in anxiety, the emotional state you occupy conflicts with the outcome you want to receive. If you desire love but feel unworthy, you are not emotionally aligned with the experience of love, no matter how much you consciously want it. When you align emotionally, you begin to feel the way you would feel if your desire were already fulfilled. This emotional resonance creates a powerful inner atmosphere that draws circumstances reflecting that feeling. Alignment helps you let go of resistance. Resistance often appears in the form of doubts, fears, or conflicting beliefs. For example, you may want financial abundance, but internally hold beliefs like money is difficult to obtain or I never have enough. These beliefs oppose your desire and block your receptivity. Alignment dissolves these internal conflicts by shifting your dominant state into one of openness rather than contradiction. When you align your beliefs with your desired outcome, you release the emotional and mental resistance that once hindered your progress. Alignment prepares you to receive by refining your self-image. You can only receive what you believe you are worthy of and capable of handling. If your self-image is rooted in limitation, your mind will reject opportunities that exceed those limits, even if they are exactly what you prayed for. If your self-image expands to match the life you want, your actions, decisions, and reactions naturally adjust. You begin to embody the version of yourself who already lives the life you desire. This embodiment makes the arrival of your desire feel natural, rather than overwhelming or foreign. Alignment influences the choices you make. When your inner world is aligned with your goals, your decisions become intentional and intuitive. You feel drawn toward the people, ideas, and circumstances that support your vision. Alignment simplifies your path because you no longer question every step. You move with clarity. In contrast, when you are misaligned, you may take actions that contradict your desires, hesitating when you should move forward, holding back when you should commit, or making decisions based on fear instead of faith. Alignment eliminates these contradictions. Alignment also affects your energy, your overall mental and emotional presence. People often talk about good energy or positive energy without fully understanding what it means. True alignment creates a coherent inner state where your thoughts and emotions are not pulling you in opposing directions. This coherence radiates outward and influences how others perceive and respond to you. Opportunities that match your energy become more noticeable, and people are more inclined to support or collaborate with you because they sense stability and confidence in your presence. In many ways, alignment makes you magnetic. Another important aspect of alignment is that it prepares you to recognize timing. When you are aligned, you develop a calm trust that things will unfold as they should. You stop worrying about when your desire will arrive and focus instead on maintaining the inner state that welcomes it. This reduces impatience and anxiety, which often interfere with manifestation. Alignment teaches you to rest mentally while remaining active spiritually. You are not passive, nor are you frantic, you are receptive. Alignment also sharpens your intuition. Intuition is your inner guidance system, but it cannot function clearly when your mind is cluttered with doubt or fear. When you align with your desire, your intuition becomes stronger, offering insights, nudges, and ideas that move you closer to fulfillment. These intuitive impulses are often subtle, but when you are aligned, you recognize them and act on them with confidence. Alignment strengthens the connection between your inner world and the external guidance that shows up through events, conversations, or opportunities. Another reason alignment prepares you to receive is that it helps you maintain internal consistency. Manifestation requires consistency, not necessarily in physical effort, but in inner state. You cannot assume abundance one moment and fear lack the next. You cannot feel empowered one day and defeated the next. Alignment stabilizes your inner world so that your desire receives a consistent signal. That steadiness accelerates fulfillment because it minimizes contradiction and reinforces clarity. Alignment also prepares you to receive by dissolving the psychological distance between you and your desire. When you are aligned, you no longer view your desire as something far away or difficult to reach. It becomes something natural, something that feels rightfully yours. This closeness is essential because you can only receive what you feel connected to. If you feel disconnected from your desire, your actions and beliefs will reflect that separation. Alignment bridges the gap between where you are and where you want to be by transforming your inner state into one that mirrors the outcome you seek. Alignment prepares you to receive by making you a match to your desire internally before it arrives externally. It shapes your mindset, your emotions, your expectations, your self-image, and your behavior into harmony with the life you want. Through alignment, you create the internal conditions that allow your desires to manifest naturally, smoothly, and in perfect timing. It is not the outer world you must convince. It is your inner world you must prepare. When your inner state is aligned, receiving becomes effortless. Circumstances rearrange themselves around your inner world because the state you maintain within becomes the organizing force of the experiences you encounter. Your thoughts, assumptions, and emotions create a kind of internal atmosphere, and this atmosphere influences the way events unfold, the people you attract, and the opportunities that appear in your path. When your inner world shifts, your outer world eventually shifts to reflect it. This principle emphasizes that life is not random or chaotic. It responds to the dominant patterns you hold within yourself. The more stable and consistent your I it becomes, the more clearly your external experiences align with it. To understand how circumstances rearrange themselves, you must first recognize that you do not experience reality directly. You experience reality through your perception, and your perception is shaped by your beliefs. What you believe to be true influences what you notice, what you ignore, what you interpret as meaningful, and what you classify as irrelevant. Two people can be in the same room with the same opportunities and have completely different experiences because their inner states filter and frame what they encounter. This filtering process means that the outer world is constantly being interpreted through the inner world. Change the inner filter, and you change the way reality appears, feels, and responds. Another dimension of this principle is that your inner world drives your behavior, and your behavior influences your circumstances. When your inner state is grounded in confidence, clarity, and expectation, you naturally make choices that support progress. These choices may seem small, sending a message, making a call, applying for something, accepting an invitation, but each one becomes part of a chain of events that leads you toward new outcomes. If your inner world is filled with fear, doubt, or insecurity, you behave in ways that reflect hesitation and avoidance. This too shapes your circumstances by limiting your engagement with opportunities. Circumstances appear to change externally, but in truth they change because your behaviors shift in alignment with your inner state. Circumstances also rearrange themselves because of the way your inner state influences your interactions with others. People respond to your energy, tone, body language, and unspoken signals. When your inner world is aligned with confidence and self-assurance, others perceive you differently. They trust you more, support you more, and offer opportunities more readily. You may notice people becoming more receptive, kinder, or more cooperative, not because the world itself changed, but because your inner state changed the way you show up, and therefore changed the way people experience you. When your inner world is rooted in confusion or fear, that too radiates outward, and people may react with hesitation, distance, or uncertainty. In this way, your relationships, and therefore your circumstances, rearrange themselves according to the energy you project. Your inner state also directs your attention, and attention determines what you engage with. There are countless possibilities around you at any moment, but you only focus on what aligns with your internal assumptions. If you hold a state of abundance, you naturally notice opportunities that support growth. If you hold a state of limitation, you naturally notice obstacles that reinforce restriction. This selective attention creates a self-fulfilling cycle. What you consistently notice becomes your reality. When your inner world shifts, your attention shifts, and you begin to see possibilities that were invisible before. The moment you see new possibilities, your circumstances start to reorganize around them. Another way circumstances rearrange themselves is through the influence of your expectations. Expectation is not merely a hope. It is a psychological position that shapes your emotional responses and your interpretation of events. When you expect positive outcomes, even neutral or negative events can be interpreted in a constructive light. You might see delays as redirection, challenges as growth, or setbacks as preparation. This perspective prevents discouragement and keeps you aligned with your goal. When you expect negative outcomes, even good events can appear suspicious or disappointing. Your expectations shape way and circumstances mean to you, and meaning determines your experience. As your expectations shift toward confidence and fulfillment, circumstances adjust to match this new inner position. Circumstances also rearrange themselves around your inner world because of the emotional resonance you project. Your emotions have momentum. They attract thoughts, ideas, and experiences that match their frequency. For instance, when you consistently feel gratitude, you become receptive to experiences that generate more gratitude. When you consistently feel fear, you become more sensitive to situations that reinforce that fear. The emotional atmosphere you maintain within becomes the gravitational pull of your outer experiences. Change your emotional center, and your reality begins to revolve around a different set of outcomes. Circumstances are influenced by the beliefs you hold about what is possible for you. When you expand your beliefs, you expand your possibilities. Your beliefs determine the limits of your imagination, and imagination determines the range of experiences your mind considers achievable. If you believe something is out of reach, your subconscious will not guide you toward it. But if you believe something is possible, your subconscious begins scanning for signals, resources, and pathways that move you toward it. This internal shift affects the opportunities you notice, the risks you take, and the choices you make, all of which contribute to the rearrangement of your external circumstances. Circumstances also shift in response to the identity you embody. Your self-image is one of the strongest forces shaping your environment. If your inner identity is aligned with growth, success, stability, or love, your actions and perceptions naturally reinforce those states. The world begins to mirror the identity you adopt. If your identity is rooted in inadequacy or limitation, your circumstances reflect those assumptions as well. When your inner world adopts a new identity, one that matches the life you desire, your external circumstances begin adjusting themselves to support that identity. Another important aspect is the role of internal consistency. When your thoughts, emotions, and beliefs become unified, you send a clear signal through your actions and presence. This clarity accelerates the rearrangement of circumstances because you are no longer contradicting yourself with mixed states or conflicting desires. Consistency creates momentum, and momentum shapes outcomes more rapidly. The more consistent your inner world becomes, the more efficiently your outer world aligns. Circumstances rearrange themselves because the outer world is always responding to the inner state you sustain with persistence. When you maintain a specific inner state consistently, whether it is peace, confidence, love, determination, or abundance, the outer world gradually organizes itself to reflect that state. Opportunities appear, connections form, solutions emerge, and pathways open because your internal world is shaping your perceptions, decisions, and responses in ways that align with your desired reality. In essence, your life does not change by force. It changes by alignment. The moment your inner world transforms, the outer world begins its natural process of reorganization. Circumstances shift because your perception, behavior, energy, identity, and expectations shift. When you understand this, you no longer chase change. You become the source of it. The message comes together in a single, unifying truth. Everything you have been asking for, hoping for, and preparing for is already moving toward you the moment your inner world aligns with it. The shifts you make on the inside, your beliefs, your expectations, your emotional patterns, your assumptions, become the architecture of the life you experience on the outside. Nothing you desire is withheld. It is merely waiting for you to become the version of yourself who can receive it, recognize, and sustain it. The journey has never been about force or struggle. It has always been about inner readiness. As you refine your thoughts, strengthen your self-concept, and hold firm to the vision of what you want, you naturally reshape the circumstances of your life. People, opportunities, timing, and conditions begin arranging themselves in ways you could not have planned, but were always meant for you. The external world is not resisting you. It is responding to you. Your desires are not distant. They are unfolding. Your prayers are not ignored. They are being aligned. Your future is not uncertain. It is being formed within you right now. The more you stand in the feeling of fulfillment, the more quickly fulfillment stands before you in physical form. This is not a matter of chance. It is the outcome of inner clarity and unwavering expectation. So let this be your reassurance and your reminder. Stay grounded in the state of already having what you seek. Stay faithful to the inner reality that precedes the outer one. Stay aware that the changes you make within are silently but powerfully rearranging everything around you. You are not waiting on your blessing. Your blessing is waiting on your readiness. And that readiness is already taking shape. Everything you ask for is coming together. Prepare yourself, open yourself, and be ready to receive, because the life you envisioned is on its way into manifestation.